Hello, everybody. It is 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in East Tennessee on July 7th, Monday after the Independence Day weekend. Hoping everybody had a great, safe, wonderful weekend. Let's pray for those people who lost, still missing, that they get their loved ones back down in Texas, those camps. It's pretty horrible. It reminds me of how quickly the floodwaters came up with Hurricane Eileen. It was the amount of water that fell. Also, if it's dry prior to that, that also happens. I had an experience too when I lived upstate New York in the Catskill Mountains. You get the water coming down the mountains at the same time as the creeks go up, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's so quickly the amount of time it takes to that. So let's keep all those people in our thoughts and prayers. So let's start off with, so one big beautiful bill passed. We know it. I did a quick little video on the morning of Independence Day. So I was happy about that. 2 votes shy. I meant 2 votes to spare to passing it. So that's good. But we have the opportunity now in the CR. Chip Roy mentioned it this morning. I heard when I was going out driving around on the radio with an interview, I believe, with Chris DeGaulle, where he specifically said that, like, we have the CR, we have another chance of a reconciliation to really get key spending situations under control. So that being said, now there's one little thing that came out that I wanted to jump out, is that Congressman Mark Green of Tennessee, resigned. And what's annoying is he resigned because of some job he got. I still don't even know what it was. I didn't look there. I just saw a few things on X about it. But here's the deal: you shorten your majority, and if you're in there to serve. You wait till you're done. You announce you're not running for re-election. You find a replacement candidate for you, or so forth. It shows you how theyese people are, especially they're in it for themselves and they don't care as much. You have a good voting record. They go on Fox News, they chatter, and then they just resign like that. Boom. So I find that kind of annoying. It's kind of like what Gallagher did as well. Up in where was he from? Wisconsin. Just a new job in the middle of his thing. He stayed on for the BBB. Good for you. What a nice gentleman. It's your job. So it just shows you what kind of people a lot of these people are within the Republican Party when they get up to a certain level. It's all about them when you're a career politician. So I get less career politicians, right? You go from councilman to state to none of that. Enough of that. People who represent their constituents, okay? Like this guy that's running in Kentucky now. He sounds like the real deal. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. So let's start the video with, some of the big news today. We are told to be, this is about the Epstein files, right? We're told to be patient that justice was coming. The Epstein files and list would be made public. Now the DOJ and FBI reportedly say no client list exists. Although she told us several months ago it was on her desk. So what was she looking at? Her Christmas list? Okay, her shopping list, what places she wanted to travel. What list was that she was referring to? Okay, there are so many questions here in this issue that it just don't make sense. Why does a guy get a $60 million house for free from somebody? How did this guy under watch on the care of the DOJ end up dead? What happened to the recordings when they went in there that were all in there, but they were left because they weren't part of the warrant? Like they would really do that to anybody else. There's just so many questions here. And the fact that they're not saying anything, and in Bongino and Cash Patel, hello, give us something. Give us something tangible to say that we should believe you, because I don't. And I don't know what the reason is. I have logical reasons. They don't want to get people who are innocent in trouble associated on the list. Okay? Say that. Or more nefarious reasons is that it's bad and it's got a lot of things of bad people and it's going to open Pandora's box. But if that's reality, that's reality. Let's go for it. Okay? So I just don't, especially get the release of some JFK information, knowing that all these people were lied. That came out too over the weekend. So, going back to that investigation. So how do we trust the government? I don't care who's at the top. Okay? And you don't know what was taken out of the files before Cash got there, before Pam got there. Pam is shown to be incompetence. If you knew you weren't going to show the people, you shouldn't have done that whole stupid to social media people and then say there is no client list. Meanwhile, it was on your desk. You just look incompetent now. But if the material was gone, say we thought there was more here, it's not here. Maybe it was destroyed. Maybe it was, burned in the fireplace. Who knows? But we don't know, and we can't trust the government on it. Okay? Because there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, and there are a lot of important people connected to this individual died. Now, do I think he was murdered in the jail? I haven't seen evidence of that. But there are a lot of things you can do to get somebody to commit suicide as well. Keep that in mind, okay? But there are too many questions. This shows incompetence, in my opinion. I want to believe Bongino and Cash, but something's telling me they're hiding something. What it is, does it go down the incompetence road, or does it go down to, oh crap, I really can't, do this? If that's the case, well then that's wrong. And the other thing you have to remember is also with possible evidence leaving and things being disregarded, thrown away, burned, etc. What about, it's the people, the career bureaucrats who are deep entrenched. Okay? Are they having a gun held to their head? And I don't mean that literally. Well, hopefully not, but I don't mean that literally in so many different avenues. Say, listen, we can't do this because of this. And the career people are convincing them otherwise. Or they did nefarious things. So, I don't know. So, speaking of not trusting government, tweet with DC Drano. And I'll pop on these. I'm always looking for stories on this to keep, because I'm not letting this one go. I've said it on several videos in the past. Do not let this go. This was the era that opened my eyes, that allowed me to distrust every aspect of government and traditional institutions. And I did deep dives in just about every subject, changed my sources, verified my sources, and put them to the test. And completely, well, not completely, but partially reformed some of my opinions that were populist, conservative in nature to even more so. Okay, here we go. DC Drano. It's pretty crazy how 2-3 years of our lives were stolen from us and nobody's gone to jail for it. A deadly virus secretly engineered with our textiles, remember? A lie, okay, that they said that we now know is true in the Wuhan lab. It's named after the freaking lab down the block. Lockdowns, no justification for it, no constitutional aspect for it. This is not an unprecedented virus. Hong Kong virus in 1957, when you adjust for population, killed more. We also know that more people died, less people died necessarily because of the with the virus study versus from the virus. Okay, you break your arm, you get tested for coronavirus because everybody was getting tested for COVID when they went into a medical facility. Oh, you're tested. I knew here they were giving out reports on the radio. Oh, this is how many people had COVID. This is how many people have COVID. And children. And you find out, speak to somebody who worked in the, there's like 4 kids. And under 18, they were teenagers. Okay, because they were giving you the number of those who were tested. Yes, they had COVID and they were physically in a hospital. But they weren't there because of COVID. And we know anywhere between 30 and 50% of overcalculation of deaths through the Finnish study, New York State Department of Health, LA Department of Health, among others who did this. And the Finnish study did a compilation study all over Europe and the United States. So the justifications were never there. Okay? Forced mass stem vaccines. We unverified vaccine that they had to suppress because of the 5-year testing rule, to suppress anything else working, allowed people to die who actually were sick by not using proven testing treatment methods that we now know work, like ivermectin and hydrochloroquine. Okay? And they completely did that. Fauci, total sociopath. He wanted this vaccine push, his first successful mRNA. And mRNA vaccines worked 87 times before when they tried it. No, they didn't. They didn't work. Okay? We got Merrick's disease out of it. Okay? So there were many doctors who were shut down, shut off Twitter through pressure from our federal government. Talk about secret police. Okay, now throw in the Russia collusion hoax so we don't have to trust the DOJ and other government entities as well, but we'll just focus on this COVID right now. Masks don't work. How does a submicron particle, right through? I heard one engineer being interviewed, it's like throwing a marble through a chain link fence. Okay, and that was for surgical masks. There's still idiots wearing cloth masks. Okay, it forces you to breathe differently. It makes you hypercarbic. Okay, it creates bacteria on the mouth that you are now sharing with other people. With all the data from the beginning, when CDC first put out in April the deaths by age, I went, why are we locking down this? Why are we just giving warnings to adult people who have compromised immune systems like elderly people? versus letting us go around because they weren't there. You know, John Hopkins tracked deaths up to age 20, okay, up to age 18 through 2020 to 2022. And they were giving interviews on what they got. It's like basically no one healthy under the age of 18. Why? Because they had successful developed immune systems. Okay, so they can handle their body being exposed to a virus for the first time. So all these things thrown out the window. Big Pharma made money. The system was corrupt. Our rights were completely violated in every way. You can't go to work? What? That's right. Couldn't go to work. Government setting. You're essential. You're not essential. You can get paid full because you're a teacher. You can't get paid full. What? For nothing. A chess cult. Okay? I want heads rolled on this one. Big time. And I thank DC Drano for keeping this up. This wasn't that long ago. I am sitting in where I am because of COVID. I got the hell out of New York. It was insane. People calling on the post. We had like a private post office. The mailman would come in on the other side of the building, and you had a mailbox. They actually called the cops on people because he wasn't wearing a mask on the inside. What? People were getting their house built outside. They called the cops on them, even though Cuomo put an exception for houses under construction. It's just unreal. You can't live with people with mentalities like that. It's just insane. Goodbye. So, and then like I said, yeah, stolen election and illegitimate government. End of story. That led to, because we know they flooded, they got rid of the restrictions, but the verifications on paper ballots in these states using whatever they could, particularly specific to that individual state, like Wisconsin, indefinitely confined laws, etc. And they got the ballots in. Done. No check of the signature. And then we got 4 years of pure hell. So, anyway, I'm glad that no one forgot that. So, it's just here. History is watching closely, and there must be accountability for this severe harm that was intentionally put upon us. So, that was good. So, anyway, we'll move on here. So, this is a quote. So, basically, 160-page Brussels-funded, so European Union, report, quote, labels support for the family, the nation, and traditional faith as religious extremism. If that's the baseline, then normality is defiance and common sense is rebellion. Very accurate statement. The next wave, a new EU-backed report, warns that conservative and religious movements are gaining power in Europe. A threat. It's like the next wave. Look, you can see the communist thing. It's like Bolshevism. Centralized entities, the elimination of religion, spirituality, the individuality, the family, and you become property of the state for the benefit of the elites. Done. That's it. That's who these people are. That's who we're fighting in Italy, in France, in the United Kingdom, in Brussels, in New York, in DC, in London. That's it. They tell us who they are right here. Thank you. And that's who they are, and that's why they must be defeated. So I thought that was interesting that they put this out there. You know, you could see the coloring, everything. It is clearly that. And just making you have a negative connotation with the symbol of Christianity, the symbol of the family, a mother and father with their child, and the traditional symbols for sex. So there you go. All right, so a little foreign stuff. So if you don't know, there's stuff going on in Armenia and Argentina, okay? Azerbaijan. So if you don't know it, there's also issues with Azeri gangs in Russia going on. There was an airline that was shut down by Russia a couple years ago by accident. Then Armenia, because you have Nagorno-Karabakh, which was Armenian. Azerbaijan took it over. But we also got to know in this context, Azerbaijan is very close because they're Azeri Turks. They're allied with Turkey, and they're also allied with Israel traditionally well. As a matter of fact, Israel was using Azerbaijan for spots, and I think Israel and Turkey was pushing on them to allow them to do that. And I think the whole Syria collapse came into play, considering that Israel and Turkey were the two largest benefactors in the region for the collapse of Syria, and you can argue NATO then as well. Okay, but it's also the underbelly, right, of Russia going into the old Caucasus. And Armenia is getting weaker and weaker. And remember, Pelosi went to Armenia a couple years ago because and no one really knows, but the Pashinyan, I think I pronounced it right, the president of Armenia, has really done nothing to be nationalistic. And they're because a Christian nation in a Muslim community, we'll call it neighborhood, Russia has always been a supporter of Armenia. Matter of fact, they were peacekeepers after the 2020 war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, serving as peacekeepers. So, needless to say, there's stuff going on. Azerbaijan, they arrested a bunch of Russian journalists. Russia's cracking down on Azeri gangs. There's a big criminal element of Azeri gangs inside of Russia. So there's this lot going back and forth. And there's a lot of pressure in the international community, and tensions are rising in there. So this really explains it pretty good. But why Azerbaijan is so important for the West. Energy alternative. Azerbaijan's southern gas corridor pumps Caspian gas directly to Europe, reducing EU dependence on Russia, with Brussels pushing to cut Russian energy. So if you see, Azerbaijan is right there to the southeast of Georgia, east of Turkey, goes right through Turkey, whoop, right into Europe. Okay? Now, a lot of people think that a lot of Syria has to do with the pipeline revolving Qatari and Bahraini gas and oil as well, from the UAE. So keep that in mind. This wouldn't be the first rodeo with gas and oil. Pipelines have to play a role in Western geopolitical foreign policy. All right? So here we go. The Zangezur Corridor, NATO's dream. Azerbaijan's control of the Zangezur would cut off Iran from Armenia, okay, create a NATO route bypassing Russia and Iran, right? Two BRICS nations and so forth, and they would encircle Russia's Caucasus flank. Well, there you go. So gas, strategic, power. Syria's down. Iran has been weakened since the strikes in the 12-day war, although Israel didn't exactly have fun either. Okay, so you have all of these. You have all of these issues going on in this whole region. Okay. Hold on a second here. Froze. Hold on. So you have this whole region here that creates power. So you have the vacuum with Syria now. You got Iran weakened, Russia precarious position with their naval base in Syria, and you have all these things in the pipeline going involved. So what is going? There we go. Okay, so there you have it. Okay, so if Russia and Iran are completely isolated, okay, that strengthens the West's position in there. So I just think that it's something that we should be aware of and what goes on in the region, because here in the United States, we're not paying attention to these little things, but they're all linked. They're all little cogs here and there. It's not as big as U.S. versus China or U.S. versus Russia, but they play a role in that geopolitical war. And that's it. And you'll hear things from the media and the messaging of why something is done on a specific reason, if there is any action, particularly by the West, but it's just messaging. It's all about geopolitical world power and strategy. So I just wanted to share with you, because it's not a lot going on in the news with this and so forth. So I just wanted to share that with you. And remember, Georgia's right there too. Okay, and if you remember, Georgia is, it's on it borders Russia. Russia already did an incursion into South Ossetia, which is in North Georgia, whatever. There was already $110 million from USAID went there for election purposes to get involved to prevent the Georgia Dream from taking power. Okay, because they were putting up some protective stuff and not just going along with everything that NATO and the European Union wanted. So there's a lot going on in that neighborhood that really affects the whole geopolitical outlook. So, all right. So what do we have? We have the BRICS Summit. Rio Reset time in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil starts today, but they showed up over the weekend in pictures. I don't know. So here we go. This is Anton Siluanov, the Russian finance minister. Boom. We are ready to offer mechanisms that would minimize the risks coming from Western sanctions against Russia. That's what it's about. It's about transfer systems. It's about they're doing a new development bank, an investment bank. They just announced a transfer system because they don't want to be under the dollar anymore. First of all, it loses its purchasing power. Second, the U.S. unilaterally makes decisions and uses that trust that the world gives them as controlling these international systems, trading systems, and as the prime reserve currency. That we take advantage of these systems for our own political ends. And these countries are sick of it. And that's what this boils down to. So they have to come up with a methodology that they can work in their own currencies. And they're already starting to do it now just on their own, but set in systems. All right? Because there are a lot of things to figure out. Like if I buy, a crap load of stuff from India, but India doesn't buy as much as mine, what do I do with all these extra rupees? Okay, so you got to find a way. Well, this country buys a lot from India, so we got to figure a way to get you those rupees and then us something and whatever. So they got to figure all this out. But it's about geopolitical stuff. So Trump today tweets, anybody who goes along with the BRICS plan, another 10% tariff. But that's what they don't like. You're pushing them further away. Okay, because they're like, wait a second, why do I have to trade in dollars if I don't want to? They're loading up in banks. That'll be, in gold. Their central banks are loading up in gold. That'll be the hedge, okay, as they trade in own currencies in their own systems. And they're going to have different systems set up. And it's a long game. And it goes back years. They just realized now they're in a position to do it. And NATO's ability not to crush Russia with the sanctions, I think, really put this thing moving because they're like, we can withstand the pushback. And we can get stuff from Russia and this country and that country, okay? And the world sees that. They see our debt problem as well that comes into play. But that's why, instead of being the ward of this, of the world's currency, now people say, yeah, we like America. It's stable. They're not bullying us. We're going to stick with the dollar and the SWIFT system and all that. But that's not what we do. Okay? We take unilateral actions. We push and set influences on that. Russia is a member of the Security Council, had its assets frozen because it took unilateral action against its neighbor territory from a perceived threat based upon a actual Security Council resolution that passed unanimously called the Minsk Accords in 2015, and they didn't enact it. So they did unilateral action. So the United States is the only country that's allowed to do unilateral action, and the world sees that. So that's why they want off. And they have the ability now, as a collective, to withstand the United States' sanctions. They know it. And other items going if they stick together. And they're going to put this in. It's going to be tomorrow? No. But you're going to see little and little. Like I said, they announced some, it's a new investment development program that they're putting in, okay? There's already prototypes for the trading system. So you're going to see more and more of this cooperation. Plus you also have the SCO as well. So that's what's going on with BRICS. And we're going to see more of this rolling out, okay? One president gave an interview. He says it's the end of one rule, one powered rule, meaning the United States. Okay? The United States had a good opportunity post-Cold War to go in the right direction. We didn't. We became dependent upon BRICS nations because of our deindustrialization. At the same time, making bad unilateral foreign policy systems that further pushed them away. So this is where we are today, the RIO Reset, July 7th. So I just want to give you up BRICS. I'll be keeping an eye on this one all week too. So Sergei Lavrov was interviewed by Magyar Nemzet. Russia's foreign minister spoke not only about the war in Ukraine, but also assessed Hungarian-Russian bilateral relations. We interviewed Sergei Lavrov, the leading diplomat of one of the most heavily sanctioned major powers. So what did Sergei say? Bulletproof form, already done for me. Look at this. Demands for Russian-Ukraine peace. I'm just focusing on this back of the interview. Donetsk People's Republic, Luhansk People's Republic, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions will be recognized internationally as Russian territory. Ukraine's refusal to join NATO, return to a non-aligned and non-nuclear status, guarantees of respect for the rights of the Russian-speaking population in the territory controlled by Kiev, commitments to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. That's referring to the ultra-nationalists, particularly in Western Ukraine. Cancellation of all frozen assets that were Russian back to Russia. I mean, those are the key things that they want. Now, I want to let you know the treaty that Boris Johnson broke up back in April of 2022. It was LPR and DPR, and they weren't going to be Russian. They were going to be independent. So the longer this war went on, the more Ukraine lost, not just in blood and treasure, but in terms of territory. Okay? Zaporozhye and Kherson weren't even on the trains. Now, the one thing here that you're not gonna get is that's fine. Because here's the thing, because the majority of ethnic Russians were in the east. A lot of them are now, like in Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, Kherson, parts of Sumy now, Kharkiv, are under Russian control. So the more, and many of them who weren't in those areas moved to the Russian areas. Okay, so some ethnic Ukrainians who were in the east because they tried to flood the east a little bit prior to the war, but you move back, you're going to have more of an ultra-nationalistic because your Russian population is diluted. So I don't know how you're going to get all these people out of different levels of government and internally, whatever. Which is why I still argue when they're all said and done, they're going to go to the Dnieper River, call it a day, make a decision on Odessa and Kiev. I think they'll leave Kiev alone, probably even Odessa, but they'll go there, and that'll be the line. It'll be a frozen conflict. That's where I think we're at. So, but those are these, and they've been pretty consistent on it. I've seen a couple little tweaks here and there, but those are in the details. But that is the treaty. But the longer the territory keeps increasing, the longer the war goes in terms of Russia's demand. But those are the terms right there. And the terms from last June that Putin announced to the world that the Western media pretty much ignored. It was that, except it was pretty much the same thing. So they've been on the board. They're not going to do a ceasefire to give Ukraine the advantage and risk their position so they can restock, rearm, whatever. They're just not going to do it. The only way I see a ceasefire happening is if Ukraine pulls back. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting article and the demands. And then here we go. Pausing U.S. weapons deepens Ukrainian concerns as Russian attacks grow. Yeah, of course. So the suspension, including air defense interceptors, and it will directly affect Ukraine's ability to fend off escalating Russian air assaults. Massive attacks, warehouses. They hit a recruitment facility. They're just hitting lots of targets all over the place. They unveiled a new drone, Russia, called the Gebera. Seems to be pretty high tech. So you're just going to see them continue to push on those regions. So Ukrainian troops struggle to hold the line on the Eastern Front. Times. At the height of the Russia's summer offensive, the Ukrainian military faces unprecedented pressure on the front, particularly around Konstantinivka, and key hub of Ukraine's last major defense in the Donetsk region. It's north of Pokrovsk. If the city falls, nearly every town further north will fall within range of Russian drones, bringing Moscow one step closer to retaking the entire region. First of all, to the north, Lugansk completely under Russian control. Done. Check marks. Boop. It was at 90, 95 for a while, but that's done. Northern Donetsk is almost there. This is it. There are two cities behind it. I think Sloviansk, Liman, but this is their last lines of defense. Russia started to move fast, and what they used to use Ukraine is these old defenses that go back to the 15 war, 14 war, and they also been building it ever since. But they're struggling, and they haven't been able to do that. Same thing in Sumy and Kharkiv. So after this line falls, these two areas will be in striking distance. The Ukrainian positions will be less defensible, as in Konstantinivka here that they're talking about. So it's only a matter of time before that falls. There goes northern Donetsk. And then all you have left is the last city really in southern Donetsk, Pokrovsk, okay, which I believe it's the next slide. Yep, here we go, Pokrovsk. See the southwest. So they got kind of close to Pokrovsk, all around it, and the Russians have decided to do from territories to the west, okay, which is also Dnieper, Pokrovsk, which is northwest of Zaporozhye and basically the north of here. It's another oblast. Russia has crossed into that oblast, taken several towns, including the one I did in one of my last videos where the British own the lithium rights to. Shevkenovka, I believe the name of the town is. But anyway, the Russians here are pushing west, and it looks like they're trying to just continue west so that they'll be completely encircled in Pokrovsk, and then the Ukrainians just have to pull out. And that would seal Donetsk, cement their territory in Dnipro, Pokrovsk, and while in the north, they're still pushing south into Sumy, and even in parts of Kharkiv. So if we wait any longer, guess what's going to happen? By the way, this map is, I believe, a Ukrainian mapper, by the way. means that watch more territories. Maybe it won't be 4 oblasts Russia will demand 6 months from now. It'll be 6. So keep that in mind the more you delay. And who's got the manpower, who's got the resources, who's got the more stable economy. It's Russia, check, 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 you know. So this is one last city I want to show you. This is Chasiv Yar. Okay, Chasiv Yar. So Russia's been taking the majority of it. They're still driving west. I've been following the city for a long time. It's huge industrial area, high rises. I don't think there's anybody left minus military personnel in the city. But Russia, what they've been doing is, because of the rubble, it's defensible, and they've just pounded the crap out of it, is that they're moving to the southwest now. So they had a territory in the south, so now they're moving west even more. So it sounds like to me they're going to do that, and then they'll come from the north and the south, and then the Ukrainians inside Chasiv Yar will realize, wait a second. And this is only the western part of the city. The eastern part of the city and the western part of the canal that runs through the city is already under Russian control. So only talking about the western part of Chasiv Yar. They're going to withdraw because they'll be stuck in a cauldron again. So they don't want to have that happen, and they'll move. And if you notice, it's very open terrain there, just a few tree lines to the west. So they're going to want to do that soon if they're going to have some sort of real defensible position. So, I did that slide. So anyway, that's my video for today. Sorry about that little hiccup on the Azerbaijan issue. I don't know. I must have had internet. Unstable internet or something like that. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that Azerbaijan issue with you anyway for that reason. But as you can see though, you know, like nothing's really changing in this global environment. BRICS are going the road they're going, and they're not reacting, right? Iran's not really reacting. Russia's not really reacting. They're gonna play. It looks like to me they're playing some long games. See what happens with our debt. See what happens if the U.S. reacts to certain things. Okay, but they're going to develop their own systems going forward. So that's it. So I'll keep an eye on the domestic front, see how as we get towards the end of because the end of the fiscal year is the end of September. So see what happens with any CR, any resolution going forward, or reconciliation, I should say. Keep an eye on the immigration issue going forward. Right, Homan's at 7,000 a day. That'll get us to about 10 million. So we'll see on that front. You know, there's already something going on in LA today. I didn't even bring it up because, you know, Bass is walking around like an idiot, you know, like she's Mother Teresa or something. And then keep an eye on some European elections I'm still following that are coming up. I'll mention those more as we get closer because they're like in October. And then keep an eye on this whole BRICS summit going on. So you can follow me on my X at P.